Welcome to Your College Bound Kid,
a podcast for parents, college counselors, students, and anyone who wants a deep dive into the world of college admissions.
I'm Mark Stucker, and I'm the founder and producer. Our mission is to make college knowledge available to all. We care deeply about your kid. We believe college is a match to be made and not a prize to be won. We believe in being genuine and transparent. We are committed to covering a variety of topics, including the tough subjects. Thanks to your generosity, we're committed to providing a minimum of 10 hours of fresh, commercial-free content every month, with episodes every Monday and Thursday. We have a variety of co-hosts because we believe and value diverse perspectives. You're our listening family, and we get great joy every time we meet with you, as we do our best to give you tools so your students can soar and reach their limitless potential. Good morning, friends. I'm a little sore today, but I'm in great spirits. 6 hours of gardening yesterday. Yep, once a year, you got to do that big spring refresh for your whole garden, the big prep. And normally March 1st is kind of when they do it here, but I'm in Florida for the next 10 days. So I was trying to beat the rain. So first you got to put all the compost down, then soil acidifier down for the hydrangeas. And then you got the holly tone, rose tone, osmocott. And then you got to put the pine bark soil conditioner down on. We have azaleas, roses, hibiscuses, hydrangeas, crepe myrtles, loropetalums, Japanese maples, red maples, Chinese pistache, and camellias. But mentally, it just does something for your body. So, friends, if you're like me and you're one of these people who thought, like, gardening is kind of lame, it's kind of not my jam, I encourage you to try it. It's really underrated. It's really a lot of fun. Like I said, friends, I'll be in Florida for the next 10 days, visiting colleges, visiting current students and former students, doing a 3-day college fly-in to Elena University in Boca Raton, and doing a podcast meet and greet in South Florida. That's right. It's the last time I can share it with you. This Thursday, February 19th, 6 p.m., American Heritage School in Broward. Now, you can just go to yourcollegemounkid.com. You'll see the events tab. It's not too late to sign up. Love to see you there in my South Florida trip. And probably the next 3 times you hear me podcasting, I'll be coming to you from Plantation, Florida. Friends, our Colorado gathering is really shaping up to be nice. We have an additional rep. That's right. Elena University is joining us as well. Now, this is going to be April 8th at 6 p.m. That's a Wednesday. Centaurus High School. That's in Lafayette, Colorado. It's almost equidistant between Boulder and Denver. It's going to be a blockbuster event. We've got CU Boulder. We've got Colorado College. We've got Grinnell College. And that's, of course, Kate, Hillary, and Grace Robertson Lloyd from those 3 schools. And Elon representatives come as well. So you can have your opportunity to talk to 4 different people. You can talk to them about their school. They'll take some questions, but also they're going to be explaining how files are read, how decisions are made. And friends, if you got the resources to hop on a plane and take a trip there and spend a night in a hotel, I really think it's going to be well worth your time. Or if you're looking at visiting some schools in that area, why don't you make sure you go around that time? Or if you don't mind driving a good distance, it's going to be well worth it. Once again, yourcollegeboundkid.com under the events page. You can't miss it. Now, next Sunday, Counselor Connect. That's right. We are going to have 4 specialists in athletic recruiting. These are former college coaches at places like Duke and Emory and multiple California schools who are now flipped from being college coaches in the athletic sense to college admission coaching. So counseling, and they're going to explain how athletic recruiting works. So just know we are taking more applications for Counselors Connect. In fact, 15 new members received their notices that we'd accepted them this week, and we're taking more members. So you can sign up for that on yourcollegeboundkid.com under the resources page. We're always looking for public school counselors, independent school counselors, CBO counselors, and we are still taking some IECs as well. All right, friends. A lot of you have said over the years, I just like to listen to the episodes, the whole interviews in one segment. Well, we're ahead of the game. I've meant to mention this last week, but the interview that you're going to hear today, Elena Hicks at SMU, or a couple that you'll hear on Thursdays podcasts, my students, Summer and Daniela at UPenn, or Elliot Felix, his book, The Connected Calls. All those interviews are up. They've been up, actually, for about a week. If you want to go back and hear the Peter Pitts one, or the Comp College Method, or Luther College, or Olin College of Engineering, University of Utah, all those are up. If you just go to yourcollegeboundkid.com, go to the interviews tab. All right, friends, today's episode, part 2 on winning outside scholarships. Last week, I really talked about why people oftentimes don't apply for outside scholarships. This week, it's tips on how to win them. And then we'll have Elena Hicks, and she will give her impression of my thoughts on SMU. So I'm going to share 10 impressions I have about SMU, and she's going to correct me if I'm off and elaborate if I'm right. And Elena is the AVP, which is the Assistant Vice Provost, Dean of Admissions, or Chief Enrollment Officer at Southern Methodist University, better known as SMU, Dallas, Texas. I loved this interview, so I hope that you will enjoy listening to it as much as I enjoyed conducting it. Now, friends, before we dive into today's content, I just want to share a SpeakPipe message that came in this week. And the listener expresses interest in reading Lisa and Linda's new book. But the listener also comments on a book that I've recommended quite a few times on our podcast. It's called The Childhood Roots of Adult Happiness. And the book talks about how if you watch how your kid plays, I'm talking about even before they go to elementary school, it's oftentimes a roadmap into what careers they will find fulfilling. So take a listen to this anonymous message that came in from one of our listeners.
Hi, Mark and YCBK team. Congratulations to Lisa and Linda on the book. I'm excited to read it. I wanted to share a comment on the other book you mentioned, Childhood Roots of Adult Happiness. I read that book when my children were very young and I had forgotten about it, but I think its lessons must have taken root, because when I look back at my kids' childhood and then the conversations we had about majors and careers and college choice, it's clear that they are both pursuing things that have roots in their childhood play and that we'd encouraged along the way. My son's favorite thing for years was the Pokemon card game. He loved the math in that game, calculating points, strategizing how to set up a deck, and he liked other math games too. He ended up majoring in data science type major, just graduated, and is now happily working as a data scientist. My daughter was always happiest in nature and loved animals, bugs, plants. Her first career aspiration was at 4 years old. When we visited the zoo, she saw a woman cleaning the anaconda cage, and she said she wanted to do that when she grew up. She's now an environmental science major, has spent a couple summers happily working on environmental restoration projects in the 90-plus degree weather, and is very excited to finally be taking a herpetology class this semester. Your podcast helped me keep them focused on fit, and both ended up at great colleges for them. I'm now a volunteer counselor with a CBO, and I look forward to reading the book and applying it with the kids I volunteer with. Thanks to the team for all you do.
All right, friends, let's talk scholarships. It's time for my two-parter conversation about external and outside scholarships. Now, the first thing I'm going to say is a listener sent in a message this week, and they're like, Stock, you gave 9 reasons why students don't apply for outside or external scholarships, but I think I've got a 10th. And the listener said one reason they personally didn't apply is some of these schools wanted to publish the award winners, and they just wanted to keep private. So I guess you could say there's a 10th. Now, from my experience, anyone who feels that way probably would not just not apply to scholarships. They would just skip that particular scholarship if they wanted to maintain their privacies. But I thought it was an important point enough that it warranted mentioning here. All right, in part 2, I want to focus on giving you tips so that you can be successful at winning. And most students can win an extra $5,000 to $10,000 in outside scholarships by working smart and working little sweat equity. I have a student right now at Princeton who had a $20,000 gap between what the parents were willing to pay and what Princeton was asking. And what did this student do? She went and won $20,000 of scholarships. And even that almost all of them are not 4-year renewable, her parents are like, okay, if you can do that, we'll pick up the tab for years 2, 3, and 4. So that just shows you what potential is out there. I'm going to give you a few tips for those of you who want to go for it. A few tips on how to help you win these outside scholarships. Now, why am I doing it when we have what I feel are 3 excellent interviews on this? Because 1, Most people don't go back and look at the back catalog. They just kind of start when they start. 2, even if you have heard it, it's nice to have a refresher. And thirdly, I'm going to share something at the very end, which is one of the reasons I decided to do it. And I'll share that at the end. All right, first tip, local. Hopefully you remember the word local. That's what I want you to focus on. Why? Let's say you live in Cincinnati, Ohio, okay? You're not competing with the kid from Dallas, LA, Chicago, or San Francisco when you apply locally. The scholarships are in your local area, first and foremost. But secondly, the benefactor wants it to go to somebody local. That's how they set it up. What it means is less competition, higher odds of winning, better return on your investment. All right, what are some great places to find local scholarships? Your own high school, your own guidance counselor. So many different people, when they set scholarships up, they go to the local schools to let them know. You should look at last year's graduation program. A lot of times they'll highlight it as soon as they got these outside scholarships in the graduation program. You can get some good ones from there. Find out what other local high schools have great scholarship sections on their website. There are a few people here in Atlanta that have great sections on their website, and I would always give those other websites to my students so they could find out. And then we eventually built our own, but even ours wasn't as good as one of the other ones, so I gave people both. Community foundations. That's one of the main things that community foundations do is give scholarships to students. Now, community foundations, they are an assemblage of leaders in a particular area that just want to help the community. It's everything from educators to business people to attorneys to entrepreneurs, philanthropists, that want to support the local community. And it's extremely common for them to establish scholarships. In fact, I've never even heard of a community foundation that doesn't give some scholarships to local residents. Libraries can be great. Local newspapers can be great. Local organizations like churches, synagogues, and mosques. Local civic groups like Boys and Girls Clubs and fraternity sororities, Kiwanis, Elks, junior leagues, Lions clubs. These can all be really great, sources for local scholarships. All right, the next thing you want to look at is, and you'll hear a number of terms used for this, membership scholarships, affiliation scholarships, affinity scholarships, workplace scholarships, all of those you'll hear. It's all the same thing. You're focusing on something that you have a connection to, whether you're a member of a group, you're affiliated with an organization, it's a job or workplace, and that could be parent or student. My former neighbor to my left was from Ohio. The new neighbor's from Ohio too, but the former one was from Ohio. And the mom worked at US Air, and the daughter went to University of Miami. She was friends with my daughter. They played basketball together. And she got a nice little scholarship from US Air as a workplace scholarship because mom worked there. So it can be a parent occupation for the workplace ones. Student, you might have had a job at a Chick-fil-A, a Dairy Queen. That's great. Hit them up. By affiliation, it could be where you shop at a place like you shop at Kroger. Okay. See if they have a scholarship. Credit unions are great for these. Banks as well. So are local chambers of commerce. Even sometimes things like dentists and doctors and car dealerships, like where you frequent. Membership, affiliation, workplace. And then affinity is like, your descent, like you're of Iranian descent. You've got an affinity there. Scottish descent, Scottish Jewish descent. Or it could even be something like military kid. Okay. Parent as an educator, like that affinity, there are specific scholarships out there for that. So that's a really big category in addition to local. Now, if you could combine that with local, I'm telling you, that's the best. But sometimes for the membership, affinity, affiliation, workplace, you are going to want to go outside. But when you go outside, first go outside to your region, then go to your state before you go national in your search. And then another great type of scholarship is what I call special condition scholarship. So one of the students I worked with who won the most scholarships, unfortunately, had childhood stomach cancer at age 12. Now, fortunately, she was completely healed by the time she was 16. But we focused on cancer scholarships for survivors of cancer. And she won 4, and one of them was $25,000 that she won, which was really nice. So, yeah, or it could be a parent survived breast cancer or some type of cancer, military disabled parent. You have to think like a benefactor. Think about a benefactor. So a benefactor has gone through an experience and they want to give back. And they usually want to give back to somebody who they identify with in some way. And so that's why they might identify with someone who's got the same affiliation, whether it's ethnic descent or worked in a local union, or within an automotive industry or whatever it is, some type of affiliation. Or, like I said, the special condition ones. They identify with that. They think it would have been nice to have had resources like, my kid almost died of cancer. I want to give money for somebody else in that situation. And so you have to kind of think like a benefactor. And then when you think like the benefactor, it will help you in your search. Then there's also scholarships around career aspirations, especially helping professions where there's shortages. So like nurses in rural areas, doctors in rural areas, engineers, lots of different ones. And so this is for people who are interested in going into a particular profession. There are definitely scholarships out there like that. By the way, sometimes the affinity scholarships are sometimes called heritage scholarships. So that's another term you'll sometimes see. Now, the question is, do you use these national databases that are out there, or are they a waste of your time? And my thoughts are that it is good to fool around and be exposed to some of the different national databases out there. You don't need to work with all of them. In fact, I don't recommend you work with all of them, but it's good to work with 2 or 3 of them, and especially some of the national databases that that have local filters. So those are the best ones. They either have a local filter, so you have the national database, but you can search locally, or some of the other ones that are really good, they set it up so that once you've entered all your information, they're kind of like a Common App. You don't have to keep constantly putting in the name of your school, your email, your birthday, your parent information. And some of them are almost like a Common App where you do one main essay and you don't have to keep repeating that one main essay, and it can go out to multiple different people. So some of the national databases that I like are scholarships.com, Going Merry. That's a very good one. It's set up a lot like I was telling you about. Bold.org is also set up the same way as Going Merry. JVLcollegecounseling.com is organized really well. When I was at KIPP, we saw more kids win outside scholarships from this site than any of the other national scholarship sites. MyScholly.com, that was originally started on Shark Tank. Christopher Gray, the founder, was a student in Birmingham, Alabama. He won a ton of money, and then he turned around and founded a business out of it. It was acquired by Sally Mae in maybe 2023, a couple of years ago. And now they use like an AI-driven approach to helping you find scholarships. So that's we're checking out. FastWeb's been around forever. Mark Kantrowitz, I've had on the podcast 3 times. He founded that. Big Future, which the College Board puts out, that's got a good one. Appley, which is the new name that used to be CapEx. I still think of it as CapEx. They've got a good one. And niche.com has a good one. I've heard good things about accessscholarships.com, although I haven't worked as closely with that one as I have with the others. So they can be overwhelming, the national databases, but it's worth working with a couple of them and just try out a few different ones and see what works best for you. But once again, focus on the local. Okay, that's really, really important. Now, a couple more tips when it comes to winning these scholarships that are really important. This one is really important. You have to learn how to read the scholarships descriptions very carefully. First of all, is it need-based or talent-based? Or all the others, like affiliation-based or special condition-based? You have to be able to read the criteria, honestly look at yourself and say, do I meet the criteria? You want to target scholarships that are looking for someone like who you are now, rather than you trying to contort and make yourself sound like what they want. Read in detail the description. If necessary, reach out to the scholarship contact and tell them a little bit yourself and ask, do I sound like the kind of person who you're looking for if it's not clear? That's going to save you a lot of time. So much time is wasted by people applying to scholarships that are dead on arrival. It reminds me of like the MITES program, which is a highly selective summer program at MIT. I cannot tell you how many students I work with are like, I'm going to apply for MITES. Now, if you read MITES very carefully, it could not be clearer. It's for first-gen or under-resourced students. And some of the most talented students I've ever worked with have tried applying for mites. And if they're well-resourced, they don't win because, it's very clear if you read the description who they're going for. So you need to read that both from a socioeconomic standpoint. If it's like one of the high achiever scholarships, then do you meet the criteria of what a high achiever is? And then all the other things I mentioned, like, affiliation and affinity and membership. And you just have to look at what they're looking for. Some people are looking for an extensive background in service. Do you have that? So you just got to read that description. Very, 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 very important. Next, learn how to write very good essays that showcase your value. I thought Kristen Mosley did a good job in interview 74 talking about her own evolution. She was looking at why she wasn't winning, and then she went back and looked at the writing she was doing. And while it is some work, it gets easier because most of the time there are about 6 to 8 essays that they may ask for. And once you've written those 6 to 8, you still need to tailor it for the particular scholarship, but repurposing isn't as hard as an original essay. So it kind of gets easier to apply to like 30 or 50 than it does to apply to like 3 to 8. Now, your essays need to present you as a compelling applicant who really lines up with what the scholarship committee is looking for. It's why it's really important that you read very carefully the description of who they're looking for when you're looking at scholarships. And make sure it's describing you. The other thing you need to do is put a lot of time into thinking about this question. If I were a scholarship committee, what would make me want to give a scholarship to me? Whatever the answer to that is, that's often a clue to what your compelling narrative is going to be. And you need to think of writing in an authentic way, but also in a persuasive way. You need to be appealing and showing you're worthy of investing in. So you want to be really unique in a compelling way. All right. Next, have an accountability partner. Listen to the interview with Julia and Laura, interview 201. I thought they did a great job of talking about that's a mom-daughter accountability partner. Sometimes it's a friend-friend accountability partner, and you divide your different roles. And one person does one thing, one person does another. Let's say you say, hey, I'm going to do one scholarship a week for 30 weeks. There you go. You set out and you map it out. And it's imperative that your accountability partner is highly motivated and disciplined. Very important to have an accountability partner. It's also important to have an organizational tool that's helpful. Once again, I'd refer to the Julia Laura interview. They talk about some project management software that's really good for this. It just gets easier as you keep moving forward. Now, try to find out how many winners there are and how many applications they get. That's really important. So you can kind of just look at what's the success ratio in general? What's my competition that I'm up against? So one of the things that I really like about Appley CapEx feature, they have a section where they let you know how much work is it to do the scholarship. Like you look at something like the Gates scholarships, and you could be writing essay after essay after essay after essay. Some of them are not that much work. And then it also lets you know about how much competition you have. And that's extremely helpful as you're trying to justify whether it's worth the investment of my time. Now, when is the best time to start searching? There are scholarships that can be won even in middle school, some in freshman year, some in sophomore year, but those are rare. I recommend using the summer of your rising junior year to do serious research. There are some ones with earlier deadlines that you're going to want to, especially if you're looking at more regional, state, or some national ones. But if you're a senior and you're just hearing this, you know what? You should know that there are some spring deadlines in March, April, May. There are also fall deadlines if you're a junior for the senior year as well, like October is a pretty common one. So it's whatever the benefactor sets up. So whenever you're ready. Dive in. But ideally, a great time to start would be to use your summer of your rising senior year. That's what I would recommend. The good news is that you've heard me emphasize local. A lot of the local ones are the ones with the spring deadlines, and that's where I want your focus to be anyway. So don't be discouraged if you're just a senior hearing this now. It's not too late. By the way, I had a few students reach out and tell me they won scholarships this week. One of them said they heard me mention Going Mary back in the Kristen Mosley interview, and that's where they won their scholarship off Going Mary. It's funny, the other one originally reached out and said what I do if my student is discouraged because they're not winning. And it felt like before I could even get back to them, they won one. Another thing that's important is choose your recommenders very wisely. Very important. Prep for any scholarship interview you have. By the way, Kristen Mosley's got a really good conversation in that interview 74 about choosing your recommenders. So if you want more on that, I'd encourage you to listen to that. One other thing that critics of outside or external scholarships say, and they are absolutely correct, most of the money is institutional money from the colleges themselves. So I still want you going after that institutional money as your primary strategy and making external or outside scholarships your secondary or your ancillary strategy. Sometimes something like 2 Bs that maybe could have been A's with a little bit of tutoring and some hard work, that could cost you tens of thousands of dollars in renewable scholarship money. Maybe 40 extra points on an SAT or 2 extra points on an ACT. That could be worth like $7,000 a year. And remember, most of the outside external ones are first year only, definitely some exceptions. Most of the institutional ones are 4-year renewable. All right. Now, I said I almost wasn't going to do this segment because I felt interview 74, 196, and 201 did a great job. I already said one reason I did is because not everybody goes back. And even if you go back, we don't really have a memory. We have a forgetter, right? We forget the things we hear. But I'll tell you the main reason I decided to do it. It's because with language learning models, LLMs, AI, it's easier than ever to do a search right now. It really is. Because you can go to your favorite language learning model. I like to use a couple of them. My go-tos right now are Gemini and ChatGPT, although I know a lot of people are swearing by Claude. Every once in a while, I'll use Perplexity. And you can put a really specific criteria in. You really can. So let's say you live in Knoxville, Tennessee. You want to know if there are any local scholarships. You could say, hey, I'm female junior student at such and such high school. I have a 3.5 GPA. My family makes $125,000. My mom had breast cancer. My dad works in the automotive industry. We shop at Publix. We bank at the Knoxville Credit Union. And I've had jobs at Dairy Queen and Chick-fil-A. I'm interested in being a pediatric nurse. And I'd like to know if there are any local scholarships that you feel I meet the criteria for. And it can really save so much time on the search. So AI is really good for this. And if you get nothing because you're too specific, then you can go back and you can remove one thing. Or if you're getting too many things, then you can add another factor. It's just a new, tremendous tool that's helpful in identifying scholarships. Friends, hopefully you found this helpful. I will say this. I never said this before, but I'm going to say it. So I tend not to like podcasts that are monologues. I really don't. There are a few I listen to, but I by far prefer conversational podcasts with multiple people, 2, 3, or 4 people chatting it up on a topic. And so for a long time, I was kind of a little insecure, to be really honest, about doing these monologues. But enough of you have told me that they're helpful that I'm going to continue to do them because there are a number of topics that I just have a lot of passion on. And I'll be thinking through the week. I'm like, this can help our listeners. Oh, this can help our listeners. Oh, I can't wait to do this. And so thanks for anyone who told me that I've done some kind of monologue in the past few years that you found helpful, because I've finally gotten over that insecurity. I still prefer podcasts with multiple people rather than solo, but I'm now convinced that if the content's good enough, then there's still value to the listener. So I thank you for all that feedback. Friends, let's transition to an interview I did with Elena Hicks, the Chief Enrollment Officer of the college I've been to more than any other school in the country. I've been to this college hundreds of times, between 200 and 300 times. I kid you not. SMU University in Dallas, Texas.
And now this week's interview with a special guest.
Friends, we've reached part 2 of my interview with Elena Hicks about SMU University. And for the rest of the interview, I use, like I said, a new approach that I'm using to interview senior admission personnel. So I share 17 impressions I have about SMU, either from my own visits and my own observations, from talking to admission officers over the years, or mostly from listening to my students who are at SMU now or have graduated from SMU recently. And, I ask Elena about these and get her thoughts. Does she agree? Does she disagree? Can she elaborate? And so last week we took the first 4, and I asked Elena if she agreed or disagreed. Well, this week I share another 10 impressions of SMU. Listen and enjoy. Now, this is maybe one of the biggest things I learned on my 3 days back there recently, Elena. The Lyle School of Engineering, very underrated. I was very pleased with what the students in Lyle said about Lyle when I was on campus for 3 days. Any thoughts on Lyle?
Yeah, Lyle is, I think, a very strong engineering school. One of the things that I love about Lyle is about 40% of their students are female. So you don't necessarily see that in a lot of engineering schools, having such a strong female population. Lyle gives students a chance to work with corporations, and this seems to be a theme at SMU really, really early. And so when you look at Lyle, when you look at the majors and offerings in Lyle, what I'm always impressed about is that as I walk through their building, there are at any turn people from corporations that are there working with Lyle on projects. So what companies will say is, I have this question, I have this project. Are folks in Lyle willing to work with us to figure this out? So we have civil and environmental engineering, computer science, electrical engineering, computer engineering, mechanical, as well as operations research and engineering management. So Lyle gives a student a chance to realize that engineering is for them. One of the things that we're trying to combat as a whole for SMU, but I think other schools, a lot of students haven't been exposed to engineering, and they don't know that engineering could be a degree that really could help them as they launch a career. So what we try to do in Lyle is show students the practical side of engineering. For instance, if a student is really about the green of us as a world, meaning looking at ecological systems and how we're using resources, engineering is a great way to combine what is thoughtful and practical and needed to keep this world going, but at the same time using really developed skills in math and science to be able to make those things happen. And so sometimes when students are looking at more altruistic majors, they don't think about engineering. But in engineering, you have a base truly to change the world because you understand how it works from a mechanical point of view and from a numbers point of view as well. So I'm proud of Lyle. It's a smaller engineering program, so very hands-on.
All right, here's one for you. Students are happy and friendly.
Yeah, I don't know if I can say too much more about that. It is here. I'll tell you from a personal point of view. There are people all the time, and as long as I've been in admission, many of my wonderful long-term colleagues have left admission to do adjacent things. They're consultants or doing something adjacent in higher ed. And when people say, Elena, how long will you stay in? I was like, I've only been on a school or college campus my entire career. And what drives me is on days where I am bogged down by everything that's not student related in regard to I'm not meeting with students, I'm dealing with issues in the office. As soon as I walk out of my office, Mark, I pass our welcome desk, which is populated with student ambassadors. And every day, several times a day, I just stand there and talk to them for 5 minutes. The student ambassadors, I had never had braids before. So 3 summers ago, it was the student ambassadors who said, okay, Dean Hicks, this is what you need to know about braids. Here are the colors. Here are the things that we think would look good on you. Here are the things that we don't think would look good on you. Or I can pass by and they're like, Dean Hicks, we're getting ready to do a TikTok. Do you want to be in it? No, students, I don't think I want to be in it. What would you like for me to do? We'd like for you to be hold the camera. No, Dean Hicks, you've got to go a little bit higher because you got to catch that. So now in restaurants, when you leave a restaurant and people are trying to take a picture, they need somebody to take it. I am the person who walks up and they say, oh my gosh, you did such a great job. And you knew this. I was like, the students at SMU have given me so much in regard to knowing how to make you look good on social media. So they are extremely smart and they are friendly and kind. and they make my day. I don't know what I would do without them. I have learned so much from my SMU students.
They gave me a great experience, by the way, when I was there. And they were really creative, too. They're like, would you like an individual to take you around in a golf cart? Then they found someone who spent a couple hours with me. Then they said, would you want to go on admitted student visit stuff? Because I was there at the same time when you had both the incoming admitted students and regular students. So, I can just picture them. They were friendly and smiling and creative on my visit. So shout out there. So here's another thing I heard on the visit, and I've kind of observed this because I'm a big sports guy. SMU's move to the ACC has been great for the school in terms of not only reputation, but the school's made a big investment into athletics and sports program. And while there was school spirit before, the level of athletic school spirit and just the overall school spirit feels like it's even higher since the movement into the ACC. Do you have any thoughts on that? This is something I heard from more than one student on my visit.
So in the 9 years I've been at SMU, this is the second portion of having winning teams. When I got there, especially those first 3 years, and in particular with football, we weren't doing great. And I think because we hadn't been doing great for a little while, I mean, good teams, they won, many games, but what changed was we got a coach who said to students, no matter if it rains or is shining, we need you in the stands. And I do believe the ability for that coach and those players at the time, in particular in football, to say, we need you. And then for students to start showing up even more in the stands. And then our ability to start winning really brought us into, I think, a great gateway into a new athletic conference. And so, yes, things have changed. We now are in a way big time athletics where we had always been strong. It's big time athletics. We are engaging with universities that on the field or the court that we've never engaged with before in that regard. That's been exciting. And we've had a lot of great alliances with those universities as we moved into a new conference. So it's all been very, very positive for us. It has changed the landscape of SMU in many ways, but I think in all very positive ways. The last thing I'll say about it is alumni are thrilled because they saw us through the 80s. They saw us through the 90s, the ups and downs, and to be in a great athletic league and to be winning and to have championships at an even greater rate, I think means the world to them as well.
All right, here's one for you. Students are driven and ambitious.
The university is driven and ambitious, and that's why students are as well. But well-being also means a lot to the university. So as we drive forward, as we are incredibly nimble and ambitious, we're also looking to the care of our students, that they feel well, that they feel honored, that they are physically fit, that they emotionally are well as well. Because if we have all that ambition and drive and students are unhappy, it wouldn't be a good thing. So we like to keep that balance.
Here's one. The residential commons system produces a close-knit relationship and lots of student support. And I know you haven't always had the residential commons system, so maybe you want to talk to us a little bit about that, say anything you want to say about your housing.
Yeah, the RCs, residential commons are, when I got to SMU, I was told, they were like, okay, people say it's akin to Harry Potter. We don't use that term, Harry Potter, in regard to talking about the residential commons. But if you think about it, it really is. Like, when I go into Ware Commons or I go into any commons, MOMAC, whatever it is, like that commons has this ethos. They have a personality. They are a group of students who have gotten to know each other and learned each other well. So prior to residential commons, SMU had, dorms where people signed up to live wherever they wanted to do. We went to the residential commons, and I think it's been about 13 years ago. What the university wanted was students getting to know each other better and feeling united. And it's exactly what it's done. So you're united as a university, but you're also united as a residential commons. Many of the people who the commons are named after are alive and well. So that's the other thing I think is really, really great. Like Kathy Crow Commons. People know, Kathy Crow. They've been to her home to have dinner. And so I think that's another endearing thing about the commons. Also, there are competition amongst the commons. So some of them have, Some of them have events that are in their commons, and people come to, or it could be they have a competition with another commons. That's a fun thing to do outside, whether it be something about an obstacle course or eating or whatever else. The other thing that I'll say about the residential commons is that each one of them has a FIR, which is a faculty in residence. And so it's not somebody who is like the dorm director. It is literally a faculty member, and many of them have families. So many of them are moving their spouses and animals and children into a residential commons for 2 to 3 years, just to be another warm face and person who rallies behind students. So Dr. Sun, who teaches chemistry, hasn't lived in the commons for a while, but he was a FIR for several years. And so every Sunday, they would have some sort of treat that his wife fixed from scratch for any of the residents. And they had dinner together. So it just brings together a lot of camaraderie. And college should be about getting to know people more than just on a surface level that you may not see in class, but you live with. So it definitely has been a positive. What's changed this year is that our residential commons had a 2-year requirement. And beginning this semester, it'll have 1-year requirement. But students love living on campus. And so the residential commons tend to be full because students love to be close to the action and live on campus.
All right. So you're the AVP, Dean of Admissions. This is definitely one up your alley. SMU is experiencing a real surge of interest and increased applications, and students are coming from all over the world.
Yes. So this is how I explained it last year. I was trying to remember what I was saying last year to my colleagues. In particular last year, and SMU has been growing in so many different ways beyond last year. But what happened last year was our ability to go into a new athletic conference. We waived the application fee in celebration of going into a new athletic conference. We tweak things within the application and with what we were doing at admission to be more student forward. Are we asking this because we're using it a lot and it means value to us? Or are we asking this as something that we think a student must tell us? So we didn't streamline our application, but we actually intentionally, thoughtfully looked at things in a different way. You see the explosive growth in Dallas as well. And so what I've talked to my colleagues about last year, as people said, oh, we're 58% up in applications in the first year class. That has to be because of the move to a new athletic conference. Well, part of it was about students getting to know us and having an application fee waiver. Another part of it was a surge in Dallas. And so as I talked to my colleagues about this last year in particular, I was like, I don't know that you can pick out one thing about SMU, but that particular year, the synergy came because there was a lot of positive change and enhancements all happening in one academic year. So SMU in particular last year very much exploded, always heading in that direction. But there was an extra boom last year with the entry into a new athletic conference and the national scene in a more prominent way. It's been exciting.
All right, here's one. Fraternities and sororities are robust and they play an active role in campus student life.
Yeah. I think at a lot of institutions like SMU, fraternities and sororities, if they have them, play a big part in life. About 40% of our students are Greek, which means that 60% aren't. So the vast majority of our students are not Greek. And that's what people need to know. There are always ways to get involved at SMU. We love fraternity and sorority life. It's a great way to have camaraderie and, sistership and brotherhood. But so many of those students, many of them are student ambassadors in the admission office, are more than just their fraternity or sorority. They're doing more things on campus than that. So our direction to students is to just get involved, whether it be sorority and fraternity life or the other 200 organizations that we have on campus. Get involved, find a couple of things that you go deep in, and really become involved in and get to know. So 60% of our students are not Greek, and we love that balance as well.
All right, Elena, our regular listeners know I can't only have softball questions. I have to have a couple harder ones. I look at this as just trying to peel the onion and get to know the school. So if a student is more liberal leaning, they should know that SMU leans more conservative politically. Would you agree with that? That's statements I've heard from my students.
You know what? That's kind of a mixed bag question. And I'll tell you why. I truly believe that no matter where you land, you find your people. So we have a presidential library on campus, and that president happened to be a Republican president. But I think it epitomizes SMU in so many different ways. We don't look at it as such. We look at it as having the resources of a former president and first lady who love the institution and bring so much to it. It really isn't about the politics of it. What you'll find at SMU is that we truly, and I mentioned it earlier, believe in civil discourse. And so, what students will have to understand about SMU is that, let's say, for example, I am more liberal leaning and I'm a student at SMU. It could be that next week's speaker is someone who is radically conservative, and that person is going to be on campus, and they've gone through all the hoops and whatever they need to be there, and they should be there. We are not an institution that says we're going to suppress someone's point of view. As long as people are doing it thoughtfully and respectfully, we want to hear all points of views, or at least give students that ability, because either it reinforces, if one is more liberal leaning, what you think, or it may bring ideas to the mind that you're like, I didn't think of it that way. We want students to think. And so in that regard, they'll hear all political leanings at SMU. Is Texas more conservative? Yes. Does that mean that probably some universities are more conservative overall in nature? Yes. Does that mean everyone is conservative? No. People will find their people as they get to colleges and universities in Texas.
I think you said that really well. I'm glad you mentioned that twice. People will find your people. So I think that's important for people to know. So here's one. Some students are flashy and extravagant with their wealth. They call it Southern Millionaires University for a reason. And you probably know this, Elena. Of course you know. You do any searches, Google, whatever, language learning models, any of them, colleges where students extravagantly display wealth. SMU, USC, and Miami almost always come up. Sometimes you'll see NYU or UPenn. You'll see some others occasionally, but SMU, USC, and Miami almost always make those lists. So what are your thoughts on that?
That's a great question. I will tell you, and this is a thought that just bounced in my head. When I went to college as an undergrad, one of my big scholarships came from an endowment or a foundation from my small town. And I remember I had to meet once a semester. The person who was over that scholarship would come to your university and would sit down and have lunch with you and just talk to you about your experience. And I remember that person looking around the front of the student center saying, you know what, Elena, you grew up in small town Texas. What do you think about all these flashy cars? And, it just looks like there's a BMW everywhere. And I looked around and I looked back up and I said, I guess I see them, but I don't think a lot about them because I have my friends that I love. They're good to me. I have my professors that I absolutely love that are good to me. I love where I live. I love where I go to school. And that doesn't take away from my experience. People are thoughtful and kind. So if it goes back to the question mark earlier about, SMU students being friendly and engaging, I think regardless of whether they have money or not, our students are friendly and engaging. And at the end of the day, that is what counts. Do our students, many of them, have resources? Yes. Should they suppress those resources if whatever they're used to, they've had in prep school and high school and wherever they've been? Not necessarily. But I don't think that when they use their resources that they're fortunate to have, that they're flaunting it against any sort of student. In fact, growing up in small town Texas myself, I remember some of the experiences that I had in Texas at private universities, even as a student, but beyond, was out of people bringing me along on the experiences and saying, join me for this excursion, join me for this trip. And I was exposed to things I hadn't been exposed to before. So I consider Dallas, like growing up, Dallas was kind of the glitzy place. Like Dallas wasn't a place that you go to the grocery store and just just go in with a torn T-shirt and torn shorts. I think things are different now. But I think Texas as a whole is a place that shines. And I think students with resources may shine even a little brighter. But I think also that it is their right to be who they are. Many of our students at SMU have scholarships and aid. We partner with students to make an SMU education affordable. And there is a balance there of students who take advantage of scholarship and aid and those who don't.
Friends, this concludes this part of my interview with Elena Hicks, AVP and Dean of Admission at SMU University. Hope you join us next week for the final part. On Thursday's episode, Hillary joins me to answer the question, how should I tell a college I have decided I will not be accepting their admission offer? Who do I tell, and when do I tell them that I will not be enrolling? Part 3 of 3, my interview with Elliot Felix on his book, The Connected College, and it's part 3 of 3 of our look at the University of Pennsylvania, a.k.a. UPenn, through the prism of two students, Daniela from suburban Philly and Summer from Chicago, Illinois. Friends, remember, just because a school is harder to get in, it doesn't make it a better school for you. I bristle a lot of times when I hear people say, oh, that's a better school. My first question is, better for who? I can tell you this, MIT and Caltech would not have been better schools for me. They're harder to get into than where I went, but they wouldn't have been better for me. I'm not that kind of math brainiac. And I probably like to have a little fun, a little bit too much. I mean, I just was into sports, hardcore, and those are some intense places. Some places, they may be harder to get in, but maybe they're too cold, or maybe they're too hot. Maybe they're too big, or maybe they're too small, or maybe they're too urban, or maybe they're too remote, or maybe they're too diverse, or maybe they're not diverse enough, or maybe they're too expensive, or maybe they're not good enough in your major, or maybe they don't have your type of kid. Don't believe the hype that just because a school is harder to get in, it means it's better for you. The hardest school you get into may be the best school for you, but it also may not be the best school for you. Take a more holistic approach to discovering what is the right school match for you, not something so simple as, oh, harder to get in equals better. I've met many unhappy college students over the years that largely chose their school because it was the hardest one to get in and they thought it would impress their peers the most of all the names that they got into. Just remember that, friends. See you on Thursday from Plantation, Florida. And that's our show. A big thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning in this week. If you find this podcast helpful, please follow us and you will get every single episode as soon as they are released. If you want to support our podcast, you can click the share button and send it to your friends and acquaintances. You can say positive things about your college-bound kid on your social media feed. And you can help us stay commercial-free and pay our staff by donating on the yourcollegeboundkid.com website. You can write a review for us on Apple or Spotify. And if you have a question or a recommendation, just go to speakpipe.com/YCBK, hit the orange button, and speak. We will do our best to get your question in your own voice on an upcoming episode. I am the producer of the podcast, and I live in Metro Atlanta. We have a fantastic team that has over 200 years of admissions and counseling experience. Shout out to our co-hosts, Dr. Lisa Ruff in North Carolina, Susan Tree in Pennsylvania, Vince Garcia in California, Julia Esquivel in Massachusetts, Linda Depker in Missouri, Andy Strickler, the Chief Enrollment Officer at Connecticut College, New London, Connecticut, Hillary Dickman, an Admission Officer at Colorado College in Colorado Springs, and our International Admissions Expert, Kevin Newton in Dallas, Texas. Our sensational sound engineer is Nemanja Motvich. Our amazing music is from Victor Allen Weeks. Marketing designs from Kimberly Bloss. Our reliable webmaster is Stylionos Dimitru. Website updates are done by Joyce Stucker. Our image editor is Vlad Honchar. If you want to have a coaching session with me, just text me at 404-664-4340. If you want to reach someone else on our team, all of our bios with contact info can be found at yourcollegeboundkid.com under the About YCBK tab. If you want to get our free monthly YCBK newsletter, YCBK Plus, it is also under the About YCBK tab. If you want to see our recommended books and websites, they are on our website under the Resources tab. While you're on our website, check out our hundreds of interviews in their entirety. Check out our college spotlights, our blog, and our upcoming events. We think of you as our listening family, and we look forward to meeting with you every single Monday and every single Thursday.